Hello everyone, bringing you a video today talking about this. Now this is a British issue, reversible combat smock, and the set of trousers that go with this as well, which we're going to have a look at. It's not really a combat smock in the traditional sense, it's more of an oversuit, a waterproof oversuit, and we'll see that as we look at this. It's designed to be worn over combat clothing. It's part of the Arctic warfare kit, which was introduced in the mid to late 1970s, around 1976-77, part of the set of Arctic clothing that was introduced around that time. And one of the reasons for looking at it at this particular time is due to the anniversary of the Falklands conflict. These were extensively issued to men of 3 Commando Brigade, including men from the 2 attached parachute battalions. The men of 5 Brigade had to make do with other cold weather and foul weather clothing by and large. These were issued to the men of 3 Commando Brigade. So it's quite an interesting design. This particular example is not in the best condition, but nevertheless serves the purpose of illustration here, looking at the various features of the design, and that's what we're going to have a look at now. Starting at the top here, the design does include a hood, and this gives you an example of the reversible nature of this garment. You can see the white lining inside of here. The garment can be turned completely inside out and functions in exactly the same way when it is turned inside out. So you can wear it with the green side out, or the white side out, depending on the terrain you're operating in. That's the idea behind it. So you have a hood here. This can be fastened up around the neck. There are extra press studs there to facilitate that. There's one on the inside here. Snap that across, and then one there, and you can see that fastens up around the collar like that. There'll probably be a bit of rustling and Velcro noise when we get there, when we get to the bits that fasten with Velcro on the video. My apologies for that. The microphone will inevitably pick that up. You can see here we have a draw cord at the neck there that runs in a channel. The feature of the design you can see here and running down the front is the fact that all the seams on this are taped and glued to make this more waterproof. Unfortunately, the glue is failing and the tape is peeling away on this. It's not in the best of conditions, but it is what it is. So we'll continue looking at this. Just unfasten the collar there again and turn this back down. You can see down the front here we have a flap. This covers a heavy duty plastic zip. You can see there. There is then another weather flap on the inside. So when you reverse this, you still have a weather flap that fastens down the front. And you can see there are dual sets of press studs or snaps down the front here. So you have the male press stud for the outer set of snaps on the green side here, and then riveted in place just beneath that is the rear side of another male press stud, which allows you to fix the white flap when you're wearing it the other way around. So the white weather flap that is on the inside. So as I say, fully reversible in that regard. It functions exactly the same way when turned inside out. That weather flap and the zip run right the way down to the bottom hem, as you can see there. And there is a draw cord down there as well, as you can see. Just a simple green cord running through a channel at the bottom there. So that's the front of this. We'll turn this around and have a look at some of the other details now. Looking at the right hand side of the smock here, you can see details of the taped seams around the hood here, around the neck, and then up on the top of the hood there you have a seam coming up as well that's glued and taped, like all the seams are. The sleeve here, you can see the shoulder seam coming around here, low down on the shoulder of just at the top of the sleeve there. Another one at the bottom here where that's doubled back on itself. You do have some adjustment here on the cuffs. You can see there's an analogue of that on the other side, which we'll see in a minute. But that just has a little press stud tab that is held in place there, and it can then be tightened in around on the cuff like that. Tighten that right in, as you can see there. So that little feature at the end there. Interesting using press studs and snaps rather than touch and close at the cuff there. Looking at the back of the smock here, you can see further details of the seams on the hood there. There's not a lot else to see here, it's just one big piece of green nylon at this point. There's no further seam detail or anything apart from the back of the hood there. And the left hand side is a mirror image of the right, so there's no point in really looking at that. We'll turn this inside out now and have a look at the white side of this, which unfortunately is rather worn, but nevertheless it will show the details of the reversible nature of this garment. So as you can see, the white side of this has seen better days. It's quite heavily worn. The reason for the patchiness is that this material, or the coating that was used to create the white side of these garments, goes sticky over time. And where it's stuck to itself, it's obviously peeled the white off. The white has worn away from the green nylon underneath, leaving this sort of mottled effect. It would originally have been pure white, which we'll see with the trousers. They are very sticky. This is sort of dried out a bit over time. I need to put some talc or something on them to try and alleviate that problem. We'll get to them in a minute. This, as I say, is sort of, it's very slightly tacky, but nowhere near as bad as the trousers, so it's sort of dried out of its own accord. But it's entirely reversible, as you can see. The only difference is obviously the draw cord is now inside the hood rather than on the outside. We have a separate white weather flap underneath, as already mentioned, and you can see underneath here functions in exactly the same way with the zip there. The function of the garment when it's turned inside out like this is exactly the same as it was with green side out, so it is entirely reversible in that regard. The label can be found down on the inside of the white weather flap underneath here. We'll have a look at this in close-up now. And you can see this reads Smock Combat, and then in brackets reversible olive drab stroke white. Interestingly, if you look up the NATO stock number, which is just underneath that description, you just get Smock Combat, which is not very helpful. But obviously this is the section in brackets is missed out for some reason when you search the NATO stock number. You then have the size details underneath that and the NATO sizing, and then Vacuum Reflex Limited, the manufacturer, and then the contract number of CT4B1136, which dates this to around 1983-1984. So it's post-Falklands War manufacture, but it's exactly the same pattern as had been manufactured since the 1970s. And then obviously you have the washing and care details there. Do not iron. Very good advice. You don't want to be ironing nylon, obviously. So this side is very plain. All the taped seams and so forth are obviously on the green side. There's not a lot more to see here. It functions, as I say, in exactly the same way when it is reversed. We will move this around and have a look at the details of the sleeve now. I will also just lift up the hood here so you can see details of that. You can see all the seams and so forth here, but as already mentioned, the taping and everything is on the other side, on the green side. So there's no need to tape those to make them waterproof on this side as well. Looking at the cuff here, you can see we have an exact analogue of the little tab with the press stud on it here. You can see that there. So that fastens in there, and then you can tighten the cuff in using this second press stud around on the cuff there, and that tightens right down like that. You can see that there. And then looking at the back of the smock here, it's just one big piece of nylon again. All the seams and everything run down the sides there, and you can see the quite serious damage to the white finish that's happened over the years with this drying out. It would be nice to find a nicer example of this, but I believe they're all afflicted with the degradation of the white material that was used to make the lining, or the coating that was applied to the nylon to make the white lining. At least this seems to have become more stable over time, and it's less sticky now than it was obviously at one point when it was sticking to itself. Anyway, that's the interior of this. We'll move on now to have a look at the trousers. As you can see here, very similar construction to the smock. You have the taped seams and so forth. The white lining, particularly sticky in this instance, as already mentioned. Unfortunately, they do degrade in that way. But we have, let's say, taped seams. You have flaps here. These are not hip pockets. They open up. Now this would be a little tricky to do potentially, but we'll have a go. They open up right the way through. So there's Velcro on both sides. You have white Velcro on the inside there, green on the outside. So you have two flaps to open there, but you get right through to the inner pockets through there. The idea, obviously, these being worn as a pair of over trousers, so you can use that flap to access the actual pockets of the trousers worn underneath these. Similarly, the fly is just an open flap there. You can see the label in there. We'll get a close-up shot of that in a minute. There are pockets on these, however. You do have a leg pocket on the left-hand side, and you can see that there. This closes with two sections of touch and close or Velcro. The sides there, as you can see. The flap does double over there to give some weatherproofing, and you just have a single leg pocket on that side there. When these are reversed, there is an analogue on the white side as well, as we will see when we turn these inside out. There is a draw cord at the waist there, as you can see, and the waist just fastens with this single snap or press stud up at the top there. You can see the inner seam there, glued and taped, as you can see, for waterproofing, as already mentioned. At the ankles you have draw cords again, as you can see there, and these open up similar to the Arctic wingproof trousers, which we'll look at in another video. They open up like that, so you can pull these on over combat trousers and boots. So let's Velcro that back together there. So quite a simple design of over trousers in that regard. We'll reverse these now and have a look at the white side. Looking at the white side of these here, you can see the analogue of the flaps on the inside here. So you have to open this flap and the green flap to get through to the inner pocket, but It functions very well. It's a little bit awkward when holding them like this, but when you're wearing them, it's fine. We obviously have a pocket worked in here again, so when these are reversed, you still have a pocket on the left leg. Fastens in exactly the same way with the little Velcro tabs on each side of the flap there. And that's basically it. You can see the rear of the press stud there, but obviously that just functions exactly the same way at the waist there as the fastening. So you've got that there. And while we're here, we'll have a close-up look at the label here, which is just glued in underneath the flap of the fly here. And as you can see, this reads trousers, combat, and then in brackets, reversible, olive drab, white again. And then we have the NATO stock number and the sizing details underneath that, the manufacturer, and the contract number of CT4B/1364, which again would date these to around 1983, 1984. So post-Falklands, but they are the same pattern as was worn at the time, which had been around since the 1970s. And these would be worn through into at least the late 1980s. Don't actually have a date for when these were sort of disposed of and replaced with something different. So if anyone has any information on that, I'd be interested to know. So there we are, that's the white side of the trousers there. And as I say, obviously designed to be entirely reversible, including having the leg pocket there on the white side of these as well. So there we are, I hope you found it interesting looking at this. As I say, I thought it would be an appropriate time to make a video covering the smock and trousers. Obviously not exclusively issued in the Falklands, they were issued at the time for Arctic warfare training and so forth, but nevertheless an interesting bit of kit that was issued and used down in the Falklands. So hopefully you found it interesting. If you have and you'd like to see more from the channel, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below, and as ever, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. But that's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.